we are joined by the senior editor for Rotowire and the host of Rotowire Fantasy Sports Today on Sirius XM, the one and only Jeff Erickson. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us, man. We appreciate it.
Derek, Jesse, awesome to talk to you guys. Excited to talk some Diamondbacks, one of the fun teams out there.
Yeah, that's what we think, and we're always wondering what other people's thoughts on the Diamondbacks are. If those, if what we are hearing and how we kind of feel is resonating with the rest of the baseball world. But yeah, I wanted to start things off with your thoughts on this team and how exciting they're going to be in 2023.
Well, finally, we have a positive narrative. We've got all these prospects that are up. We've got Corbin Carroll, who is like the helium guy in fantasy drafts right now. You've got three outfielders in Carroll, Thomas, and Jake McCarthy that can just go down and kid it. I mean, they can catch everything. You look at the sprint speeds on these three guys. You go to Baseball Savant. It's always a fun place to tool around a little bit there. And you just see,
love it.
Oh, wow. Look at that. Look at that. Oh, look at Carroll. Oh, look at, Thomas is right there. It's amazing. Carroll flies, and yet Thomas is the center fielder. And it's just because they cover so much ground. They've got all these prospects on the way too. We're looking at Jordan Lawler eventually. These three pitching prospects that it might make the team this year, may have to wait a little bit, but there's a turning right now here, and it's a good turning narrative. Compare that with the Giants, who are, I think, a little bit getting older and not so exciting. They might pass them this year.
I guess Jesse is really against me doing this because he says there's better players out there, but I want to take Corbin Carroll in the first round. Am I crazy for wanting to take Corbin Carroll in the first round?
Perhaps. All
right.
Average draft position right now is about 58. This is I use the data from the NFBC. It's the National Fantasy Baseball Championship. It's a series of committed drafters, different types of formats of drafts, but they have this thing called the main event, $200,000 grand prize for the overall winner, along with you can win your individual leagues. High stakes players, they really get into it, which means the data that you get from it, the average draft position means a lot. So he's rising though. He used to be in the 70s and 80s. Now he's going in the 50s. That speed and just the tease of power, I think, is really something we're all intrigued in.
Yeah, sure.
He and Jordan Walker, the Cardinals, are the two guys that are rising the most right now.
Jeff, I'm curious, can you just kind of help us put into perspective how crazy it is being drafted that high? I mean, Corbin Carroll has played all of about a month in the big leagues. I imagine that's something you don't necessarily see very often for a guy who's not really seen that much big league time yet.
No, but I think the savvy drafters are getting more aggressive with the very top prospects. I mean, we've known all along. You see them coming up in the minor leagues. There's so many good prospectors out there, including our very own James Anderson, who does a great job with ranking the prospects. We've seen him. He's always high on the prospect list. He's high on dynasty rankings right now. If you play in a league that's in a dynasty league, you know he's coming. It's like Julio Rodriguez last year. When word got out that Julio had made the roster, it was just helium city there. Same with like Tatis when he made the team out of spring training. And sometimes we don't draft him early enough. Tatis was going around pick 100 in his rookie year. You'll never get that sort of bargain again. And I think there's a fear of missing out when you get an exciting player like that.
How do you temper expectations when you're predicting these young guys? I mean, like you said, a lot of the analysts, especially like with what we've seen with Corbin Carroll, a lot of the analysts, for the most part, seem to agree that he's around the number one or number two prospect in baseball right now. But from a fantasy perspective, how do you kind of factor that in, considering that with baseball, so many young players don't kind of pan out to be what we think they're going to be?
This is a Jared Kelnick comment here, definitely. If you want to compare guys there. And the thing is, you got to look at like a couple things like plate discipline. Swinging strike rate is something that you want to pay attention to. Does he chase? Carroll held his own upon his call-up. It was nice that we got to get him a little bit of taste last year, so he's not kind of a fish out of water to start the year this year.
Yeah.
You saw Witt and Julio Rodriguez struggle a lot last year. Especially, in the first month of the season. In the case of Julio Rodriguez, he was getting squeezed big time by home plate umpires. But there's an adjustment period for sure. And that's something you got to watch for. And I think there's a demarcation point where you run out of those guys that we know are 5 category producers. And those are the tried and true guys. Okay, we're done with those. Let's take some upside here, especially if I don't have any speed. If I get Freddie Freeman earlier, if I get, although Freeman's not necessarily the best example because he stole 12 bases last year, but a power hitter that doesn't run early on, you want to pair him with that speed option, or you go with a couple starting pitchers earlier. You need to get your steals because you don't want to get stuck trying to find steals late with guys that only run. You want to get the hitters that can run and do something else, and that's why Carroll's so attractive.
You almost sound like a manager when I hear you talk, and the reason why I say that is because of the things you guys pay attention to that isn't the box score, that isn't the stats. We've talked about how some stats are fluky or why they're not the best stats to rely on, but the stuff that you talk about really is the same things that like Torey Lovullo mentions when he's talking about what he's looking for from these young guys in spring training. He's not necessarily looking for the batting average to be great, but it's the contact, it's the power. There's other things that like maybe fans and other people don't necessarily pick up on when it comes to success they're having at the plate or in the field.
Well, then, we have more information at our fingertips than we've ever had before. You look at what MLB, you go to the film room on MLB.com. You can search for any highlight there, like the Carroll triple that we saw earlier this year. We had ground level. Yeah. That was like, pump that into my veins, and then like Baseball Savant, all the telling stats. It's not just, he hits the ball real hard. No, we know what the exit velocity is. We know the pull percentage. We know everything now. It's just a matter of synthesizing all that data and making it something useful. That's still a skill, but we have so much more at our fingertips. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It sounds like, this year in particular, Jeff, is going to be there's a lot of unknown, I guess, more so than other years with all of the rule changes and the shift restrictions. I don't know if anyone has a great feel of how that's going to maybe batting averages tick up a little bit for left-handed hitters. It's a little bit hard to say for sure. How difficult is that coming into this season, kind of predicting what some of those factors will look like?
Oh, it's really tough, without a doubt. At least we saw it at the minor league level. We saw AAA play under these rules last year. So we could see, for instance, in 2021, AAA teams average 0.7 stolen bases per game. In 2022 is all the way up to 0.93. Now, is that going to translate directly in the majors? Probably not, because pitchers are better at holding runners on at the major league level.
Sure.
Catchers have quicker pop times, and they'll pay attention to that, and they'll find ways to beat that a little bit more. It's always the law of unintended consequences. We always find that these teams adapt somehow, but we will see more stolen bases. We'll probably see better averages, especially from lefties, as you pointed out, Jesse. Guys like Corey Seager are really going to benefit from that because he got shifted a lot. Yeah, he's going to do a lot better off of that.
Stolen bases, you brought that up as far as a factor, and I know we went through this meeting with Major League Baseball to kind of go over the rules, the changes, everything that they were doing, and the one thing that they kind of presented was that the rest of the stats weren't really impacted as much as we might think that they would be impacted by the new rules, especially the shift being banned and, of course, the disengagements by pitchers. So, do you think that we're going to see a big uptick in stolen bases, or do you think it's just going to kind of be something that levels out and like a little bit closer to what we've seen in the past, perhaps?
I think it'll be an uptick, but not as much as people think. I think it'll probably be like 10%, instead of 20, like it was in the minors, because of the reasons we cited, and all that. And it's just major league teams are still very wary of giving away an out on the base pass. All you had to do was watch the WBC last night and see Korea lose to Australia on the final play of the game on an attempted stolen base. We like to call those toot plans, running, Ryan Theriot was the guy that was the inspiration. Just outs on the base pass. You want to avoid that. And so unless a player runs at like 75% success rate, they're not going to let them run that much. But now they're trying to maybe encourage that because they need more action in the game. We need it. You can see it's become a little stagnant. And that's why we have the pitch clock too. I understand it. I kind of, fought against the dying light about the pitch clock, but I lost that battle. So be it. But I do think though that there's a couple situations where this is really going to matter a little bit more often. I do think that you're going to see a little bit more where the batting averages are going to go up. We needed a improvement in batting average. League-wide batting average last year was 243. It was the lowest since 1968 when and they had to lower the mound after that.
That's crazy. I guess from a fantasy perspective, is any of this enough to impact your strategy when drafting for fantasy baseball? Does the steals, is it enough for you to like take a guy that might end up with more steals now because that stolen bases are a bit more likely, or is that not really impacting your strategy?
It might change my targets. It might, like, for instance, typically in a 15-team mixed league, you needed about 120 stolen bases to finish third in your league. And I like to average, every category. Say if you're playing a categorical league, 5x5 league, you want to finish third in every category to win your league. That took about 120 stolen bases. Now it's about 135 or so. Maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, but it's not precise. Obviously, we're talking about projections. Are just a range of outcome anyhow. We can't get that sort of precision, but I want to be a little bit more aware that I do need some speed. The thing is, like, power is still the one thing I'm worried about. We saw a big drop in power last year. A lot of that was the baseball. I mean, you guys, Arizona is one of the toughest parks to hit home runs, which people don't realize, because when the ballpark first came out, it was Coors Jr. And then they brought in the humidor, and everything changed, and it's now a tougher place to hit home runs.
Yeah. And that's wild too, because I still remember when they brought it in, they wanted us as journalists to not even acknowledge the humidor's existence, right? And I think the funny part about that is it has had a huge impact on playing at Chase Field. So I mean, it's something that you can't not acknowledge its existence, but it is something that we've seen happen. Like you said, we've seen the hitter friendly confines of Chase Field kind of change. And they've tried different combinations too, especially now with the roof being inoperable to open during the game while fans are in there. They try to have like the panels in the outfield at least open to maybe get some air in there or some wind or something. But it's definitely a big airplane hangar still, and nothing's changed when it comes to that. I did want to ask you this, though. You obviously have been doing this for a long time. You're one of the co-founders of Rotowire. Jesse and I were going over the website, and there is just an incredible abundance of information, including almost up-to-date hourly weather reports for games and everything like that. Like, you guys have everything covered over there. And I like, how has it changed for you from your time starting this website to now? Like you said, with so much an abundance of information available to you, it feels like things like it's a completely different game from possibly when you guys started this website.
And it's so many different ways to play the game now too. It was before, it was just, okay, we had our auction league, we had our A only league, our NO only league, sometimes a mixed league. The national contest didn't exist. DFS didn't exist. We couldn't bet on sports. I mean, now all that, there's so many different ways to parse it. And it's not just baseball, it's football, basketball, hockey, golf, cricket, believe it or not. We have, it's a worldwide sport.
NASCAR and all that in there. It's
wild.
If
you can play a fantasy game of it, we'll cover it. There's 3 of us that started it, and now we have over 50 full-time employees. We have a number, like 100 to 200 part-timers, depending on what time of season it is and all that. Awesome. And it's great. I mean, it's great. I was able to kind of cobble together a living after doing what I love. I was studying for the bar exam, actually, when we launched the company. And so I like to joke I'm a recovering attorney. I've never practiced full time.
I love it.
Jeff, last thing for me, other than Corbin Carroll, we all know about Corbin Carroll. Who are the fantasy baseball darlings of the Arizona Diamondbacks, would you say?
Well, obviously, Zach Gallen, after the year he had last year, he stayed healthy finally, cut down his walk rate. Got a little lucky on balls in play, but guess what? When you have vacuums in the outfield, that helps a little bit there. So that helps. Christian Walker had an amazing second half. Can he keep that going? I'm curious to see what Josh Rojas, how much playing time he gets now that they have Evan Longoria at third base. Shortstop is something they need to still kind of fix. I think Nick Ahmed's a great defender, but he doesn't get it done at the plate. And of course, they had the big trade over the offseason there. And, I'm a big fan of Gabriel Moreno. I think he's going to be a guy that can hit someday, but it hurt probably to trade away, one of the best bats in that lineup. So we'll see what happens there. But there's a lot of excitement there. Jordan Lawler's coming up someday to fill that shortstop gap. We'll see. In dynasty leagues, he's the next guy that people are kind of focusing on, is the next guy that's coming up too. So lots of fun young players on that team. We'll see if they can fill out those pitching spots when those young guys are ready to go.
Wanted to get your thoughts on the World Baseball Classic. Obviously, with it going on, this is a very fun time of the year for baseball. But what are your thoughts on what it does for the game and just kind of increasing people's interest in the sport, especially going on during this time of the year when it's spring training and the players have a lot going on, but it feels like kind of a fun way to kick off the season.
I love the World Baseball Classic. There's no good time to host it. That's the real problem.
That's exactly what we were just discussing, is when would be a good time for it?
I mean, the middle of the summer, but the baseball doesn't want to stop their schedule. And, all the players that aren't playing, that's going to affect those guys too. But, that would be ideal, because you can't do it after the season. There's so many accumulated injuries. You don't want all that workload. I mean, I come out to your guys' neck of the woods for the Arizona Fall League every year. And the big problem then is always getting pitching prospects. No one wants to expose their best pitchers. Same thing kind of holds true at the WBC. Look at the Team USA and the starting pitchers that are on that team. Solid pitchers, Adam Wainwright, Miles Michaelis. They're not like studs like the lineups, and that's the one thing that's a problem. Plus, it's such a crowded sports calendar for the viewer. I mean, look at today. Right now, we had conference tournament games. We had the TPC. We have spring training. We have all sorts of good stuff. Plus the regular season in the NHL and NBA. It's a very crowded calendar. Trying to get that attention, capture everything. The casual viewer. Good luck.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is my friends that are baseball fans, they couldn't wait for this to start, but I don't have a lot of those. And the other, my other friends, they're not extremely interested in it because right now they're totally locked into what the Suns have going on and other things here in the Valley. So
they don't even know about it in many cases too. You get a blank stare like, what?
Yeah, we've been trying our best to be like, it's like a damn all-star game, but there's like 10 all-star teams instead of 2. You got to check it out, Not to mention the fun stories like the Czech Republic team that's comprised of like teachers and plumbers and attorneys, former attorney yourself, right? Hey, man, we appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for stopping by, and we look forward to chatting with you more as time goes on. We love talking about fantasy baseball, and of course, it's going to be interesting to see how this Arizona Diamondbacks team comes along. Considering I feel like my perspective as a fantasy player would be I'd still want to wait to see what these guys are going to do or if they're going to be able to do it consistently. But like you said, it might be too late by that point.
Anytime. Yeah, absolutely. Anytime, guys. This is a blast.
Hey, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jeff.
Right, take care.